Here come the drums. Welcome to the Mark Peterson Show. This is the show that takes news and views and combines them with parapolitics from a blackish point of view. What's the title of today's show? The title is The 7 Ways Blacks Can Generate More Wealth. Yeah, more wealth. And why did I go after this topic today? Well, it's in honor of LL-Cool-J and Ice Cube. LL-Cool-J, yeah, ladies love Cool J. James Todd Smith and the Ice Cube himself, O'Shea Jackson Sr. What have these two guys done? Well, they've combined with a group to secure several $billions, and they're going to go after all the sporting networks that Disney is being forced to sell. Yeah, Disney merged with some of Fox, remember, last year? And now the Justice Department is forcing them to sell some of their regional sports networks in order to break up the current sports monopoly that they have. And LL-Cool-J and Ice Cube are going to take advantage of that and claim some of that wealth for themselves. Because betting on sports enterprises has been a good investment. The Carolina Panthers bought for $200 million, sold for $2 billion. George Steinbrenner led a group that purchased the New York Yankees from CBS for $8.7 million. That took place in 1973. Some 42 years later, the franchise was worth $3.2 billion. So Ice Cube and LL-Cool-J are on the right track. They want to build wealth. So they're buying assets that they think are going to appreciate in one of the areas of the market that everyone cares about, sports. And why am I talking about it? Because blacks are losing their wealth. According to the Economic Policy Institute, in an article written on February 13th, 2017 by Janelle Jones, the racial wealth gap is much larger than the average wage gap or income gap when we look at it by race. The average wealth for white families is 7 times higher than the average wealth for black families. Worse still, the median white wealth, that's wealth from the family in the exact middle of the overall distribution, wealthier than half of all the families and less wealthy than half of the families. So that person right in the middle, that group is 12 times higher than the median household wealth of a black family. 12 times. More than 1 in 4 black households have 0 or negative wealth compared to 1 in 12 white families. And we all know what's driving the wealth gap. Our inability to buy the biggest piece of equity in most people's portfolio, a house. Average household wealth for white families is $678,000 compared to $95,000 for blacks. The median household wealth for whites is $134,000 compared to $11,000 for blacks. Some of you are thinking, hey, that's people who ain't got no job and they out there and blah, 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 blah. No. The problem is exacerbated on the same level if you have a college degree or a graduate degree. The median wealth for those with a college degree that are white is $180,000 compared to $23,000 for blacks. And when you move up to the graduate or professional degrees, the median household income is $293,000 compared to $84,000 for blacks. The gap is there, and it's real because we don't know how to build wealth. And because some of the main ways to build wealth have traditionally been locked away from us, kept from us. Yeah, systemic racism has kept us from building the wealth that has been given to everyone else in this country. Jamila Solarte published an article in The Guardian entitled, "Median Wealth of Black Americans Will Fall to Zero by 2050. Did everybody hear that? The median wealth of Black Americans will fall to zero by 2050. That's the group that's in the middle that I keep telling you about. They're going to fall to zero, which means everybody else is underneath that's going to be in the negative territory. Latte goes on to say, a report calculates that the median wealth for Black Americans will fall to zero by 2050 if the current trends continue. Latino Americans are experiencing the same sustained downward slide in wealth and will hit zero 2 decades later. The study she quotes comes from Prosperity Now and the Institute for Policy Studies. That report goes on to say, by 2020, median Black and Latino households stand to lose 18% to 12% of the wealth they held in 2013, respectively, while the median white household wealth increases by 3%. So in 1 year, by 2020, white households are projected to own 86 times more wealth than Black households, and 68 times more wealth than Latino households. And again, what is that root cause? Ownership of the biggest piece of equity that everyone has in their portfolio, their homes. In his 2005 book entitled When Affirmative Action Was White, Ira Katz-Nelson notes that the first 67,000 mortgages issued by the GI Bill, that fewer than 100 were issued to non-white people. And that is the source, the building block of the wealth gap in America today. That bill, those houses, and the discrimination that went into overlooking an entire group of people. Well, we can't look back. We can only look forward. Thus, this show is going to give you 7 ways that Blacks can generate wealth going forward. Everybody got your pen and your pad? Because we're going to go through them. What's the number one thing you can do? Trade that car in for a house. Yeah, start investing in real estate. Americans have $14.4 trillion in equity in their homes as of the fourth quarter of 2017. So that number's only gotten bigger in the last 2 years. The household is the primary source of equity in everyone's portfolio, making up about 30% of your portfolio. Now that's looking at all households. When looking at Black households, it makes up an even larger percent because fewer Blacks own stock and other forms of equity. We're putting too much money into our cars. All of us have seen it. You could drive past a trailer park and see people driving a Mercedes-Benz parked next to a mobile home. Cars depreciate the moment you drive them off the lot. Yeah, depreciate, lose value. Whereas if you buy a home, the home can appreciate in value if you take care of it and force all your neighbors to do the same. Make the neighborhood worth living in, and the value of your house will appreciate. And you can use that house as a source of collateral to get loans to do everything from paying off credit cards to sending your kids to school or starting a business. But when we forego that to have the $100,000 car sitting outside of an apartment that we rent, we have the wealth engine turned backwards. We're making someone else rich. What's the second thing we can do? We can make Michael Jordan and LeBron James buy a stock every time we buy their shoe. Yeah, wouldn't that be innovative? I think LeBron might consider doing that, but Michael, not so much. Yeah, let's get them to open up an account and put money in that account every time we buy one of their shoes. I know it's a good idea. It's even genius, but I don't think either one of those guys are going to do that. And since they're not, we need to take control of our finances and stop buying so many shoes. The LeBron shoe ranges in price from $129 to $185. LeBron has a lifetime contract with Nike that's valued at over $1 billion. Michael has shoes that range anywhere from $190 to $220 with Nike. Jordan is already a billionaire, making most of that money off of his contract with Nike. They're rich. We've invested in them. We've made them billionaires. And those shoes that you buy, They depreciate as soon as you put your little tootsies in them. But let me tell you what would happen if you, instead of buying a new pair every year, put that money into the stock market. If you invested $150 every year for 30 years at 7% compounded annual interest, you'd have $16,303. Isn't that great? Wouldn't that be powerful? Instead of having a closet full of shoes that you're going to throw away at your funeral, you got $16,000 that you can use to do anything from buying a home, upgrading a home, or starting a business. Now, I know a guy who has a closet full of Jordans. He's bought every new shoe that's come out. Yeah, he's pretty cool, but he's going to be broke because he could have put that money in the market and made himself $20,000. We have got to start building wealth and stop putting it on our feet and stop putting it in our cars and putting it in places where it's going to appreciate. What's number 3 for wealth building? Have a reserve. Yeah, reserve fund. They call it a rainy day fund. And why is that so important? Because it's changed the course of Black history. This is Black History Month in 2019, and there's so much Black history so many people don't know. In the 1890s, there was a bank called the Alabama Penny Saver Bank, and it was one of the largest banks, Black banks in the country. It held most of the mortgages of Black farmers in the country. And at the time when they needed to get a charter and needed $25,000, these guys were able to put it up and build that bank. They had assets in excess of $500,000 at the peak of the bank, which would have made them one of the largest banks that had continued existing till today in the country. We lost that bank when the boll weevil wiped out all of the cotton crops of Black farmers, leaving the Penny Saver Bank with not enough reserves to stay afloat. Now, had they had enough reserves to be able to ride out that particular disaster, we may have had one of the largest banks willing to make loans, as the Alabama Penny Saver Bank did for farmers back in the 1800s. Why is that so important? Banks and lending are the key to community wealth. Yeah. You put $1 into a bank, they can lend $10 out off of that $1. You magically make money when you have a bank. Literally. The laws of this country allow banks to do a 1-to-10 ratio of deposits to loans. So if we have a bank willing to loan our businesses money, we only have to put in a fraction of what they loan out in order to create more wealth. Because you see how that works? You loan it to a business, they turn around and open an account, then they make more loans. You see how the multiplier effect creates community wealth? But you see how quickly that can fall apart when you don't have emergency funds, both in your businesses and in your life. Right at the point where you're about to make it over the fence, you run out of reserves and have to fall all the way back down the ladder. The biggest companies in the world have the most reserves. Apple, they have $200 billion in reserves. Google has $100+ billion in reserves. And you say to yourself, why do they need so much money? Does anybody remember BlackBerry? BlackBerry was Apple before Apple became Apple. They were the largest tech company in the world. But when trends shifted and people moved from beepers to smartphones, their fortunes went through the floor. They still survive today because they had nearly $100 billion in reserves. And so that company is slowly making a comeback because they had the money to rebuild their business and their strategy. We've never had that fortunate view for someone to tell us to have enough reserves to ride out the down times. Because the down times is where you build your wealth. Everybody's heard the phrase, buy low, sell high. But if you're not prepared to buy low, You're going to be the one selling low and losing all your wealth, while those who were buying low are going to wait till the market turns and make 3 to 4 times what they had to pay for assets for people who were in a panic to sell in order to cover their obligations. That's the fourth thing you can do. Save for your kids' education before they get to college. And I know some of you are saying, Mark, that's easier said than done. I have all these bills. How can I possibly put money aside for my kids' education? Well, I'm going to tell you a trick. And if you follow this trick from the time that your kids are born to the time that they get ready for college, you're going to have a lot of money set aside. It's called youpromise.com. Everybody go there. Go to youpromise.com, sign up for an account. What YouPromise does is it encourages you to shop through their website at all the same stores that you currently shop, Walmart, Amazon, Target, any of those that you shop at online, or restaurants or gas stations. And when you do, they give you 3 to 5% back in cash or in a 529 account. I know. Isn't that crazy? Everywhere you currently shop, you can get 3 to 5% back to you in cash or put into a 529 account for your kids' education. And a 529 account, for those of you who don't know, is an education account where the money can be stocked away that is tax deductible and tax-free to use. Isn't that great? You put money into the 529 account, it helps your tax status. And when you use it, it helps your tax status on that end as well. Isn't that great? Why didn't anyone tell you that before? Well, I'm telling you now. And I'm telling you the easy way to start saving for your kids' education through youpromise.com. So you go online, you're buying their Christmas gifts. You go to their website, click on Walmart, click on Target, click on Amazon. It takes you to their website. And when you're done making the purchases, they calculate the amount and put 3 to 5% back in your 529 account. Enroll all your credit cards, go to mobile, go to Exxon, 3 to 5% for every gas purchase you make back into your 529 account. I did that before my kids were born and stayed on the platform up until today. And I am yet to pay a bill at Georgia Tech out of my pocket. It's coming out of the 529 account. Now, how you like me now? Tell you something else that's cool. You can sign up your grandparents on both sides and get everything they spend to go into your kids' 529 account. Your cousins, your sisters, if they don't have kids, they can sign up and do the same. So it all rolls up into one account for your kids, and they could be going to the great schools, getting the great education, and it's not disrupting your life. You see why you listen to the Mark Peterson Show? That's why, because we're bringing you the knowledge. So what's the fifth thing you can do to build wealth? If you're using YouPromise to save for your kids' education, now you can set aside money for your kids to start their own business. Yeah, now you're getting it. I work with a lot of small businesses that are looking to launch. Many of them want to go into these accelerators that you read about on CNBC or any other business show or magazine. What you don't know is that when you sign up to be in an accelerator, you have to give up your job and go work in that accelerator on your business for 3 to 6 months. They'll give you a living stipend, but that stipend's not typically cover all your life expenses. It's just enough because they want you to be hungry enough to build your business to start bringing in the money you need to build your life. Yeah, it's an incentive. How many black entrepreneurs do you know that can do that? Drop everything, go to this great accelerator, use all their resources to help build $1 billion business, but in the interim, they have to live off a meager amount of money. They can't. Their family's never prepared for something like that. But how many white families do you believe are capable of doing that? Thousands. That's why these accelerators exist. Plus, these kids know about these accelerators while they're in college. So they come right out of school and go into these accelerators before they pick up any life obligations like kids or car debt or other things that could slow them from taking full advantage of these opportunities. How do you level the playing field? Start socking away a little money on the side with the thought that your kids might want to start a business. Now, why is that so important to me? Again, you don't get rich working for someone else, no matter how good your job is. Just think about the longest government shutdown in history, which occurred in the end of 2018 into 2019 under the Trump administration. There were government employees who were a paycheck away from foreclosure. After just 35 days, 1 month, because most federal employees get paid every 2 weeks. They were 1 month away from foreclosure, even with great jobs. So you don't get rich working for someone else. You get rich by building a business that generates equity, value. So we have to start expecting that our kids are going to chase their dreams and build something that's going to create a legacy for them and their families moving forward. The only way they get an opportunity to do that is if they get a leg up. What's the sixth thing you can do to build wealth as a black person? Build better credit. I own property and I rent out to people and I have to run credit checks. And boy, oh boy, the numbers are extremely low for people who have great jobs. And it doesn't faze them. And I sit and talk with them and say, you are hurting yourself and your wealth earning potential with the bad credit. Why? Bad credit means you will pay more for your money, especially your mortgage. You could be paying as much as $400 more on your mortgage if you're $700 versus $500. That $400 a month over the lifetime of that mortgage, think about what I just said, about $150 a month for shoes for 30 years. Imagine $400. You're talking $32,000 to $40,000 that you're going to give someone else because you don't want to pay your bills on time. You could take that $40,000 again and buy rental property and make more money. But instead, you're going to let bad credit allow you to give that to the bank. Bad credit may also affect the jobs that you get. A lot of companies run credit reports to make sure you're not the credit risk that's going to want to become a thief or embezzle their money. And if you got bad credit, they won't let you work for them. Bad credit means that some of your bills are going to be higher, particularly cell phone and utilities that will charge you higher upfront fees and deposits if you have bad credit because they think you're going to run out on them and not pay those bills. What's the last thing you can do to build or protect your wealth? Buy insurance. Yes, insurance, make a will and do estate planning. But insurance on the front end, absolutely. If you're starting to build wealth, you absolutely need to invest in the right types of insurance to protect yourself. Because if you don't, in the worst scenarios, it will wipe out your wealth. I will give you the perfect example. My son broadsided a Mercedes AMG G63 truck valued at $150,000. Fortunately, I have an insurance policy that'll cover me for up to $1 million in any car-related collisions. That kept me from having to come out of my pocket for $150,000 to cover the damages done to that car because it was totaled. If you aren't thinking that way and planning for the worst, you could lose everything in a mere amount of seconds. You need to be thinking that the worst can happen and invest to protect yourself when that does occur. And these are my 7 steps for building wealth, for building black wealth. And I want to say congratulations to LL Cool J and Ice Cube for taking a bold step and investing billions to go after these sports networks. Because that's what it's going to take. Bold steps, bold action, but making sure that you've taken all the steps to build wealth and minimize the risk to your current wealth. And these guys have done a fabulous job at not just only generating wealth with the careers that they have, but investing in assets that are going to appreciate. Not bad for a guy who was in a group called NWA. I think that A now stands for altitude, because that's where he's headed, straight to the top. Guys, I'm starting to hear those drums. And I appreciate you tuning in to this episode of The Mark Peterson Show. I hope it inspired you to do something different. And that difference is something called wealth building. And if it did inspire you, please share the show, like it, and leave us some comments. Until next time, peace.